So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to show my screen here. All right, hopefully everybody can see my screen and hear me. If you're not able to see my screen or hear me, then post it on the questions section so that we can know that people are having problems. Otherwise, I'm going to assume that everybody is able to see what's going on. So getting started, today's class is going to be 360Works CloudMail. I'm Jesse Barnum. I'm the president of 360Works. This webinar is a product of FM Academy, and FM Academy is a group of these companies. These are all FileMaker Platinum FBA members that are kind of combined together to create new content. We attempt to put out a new webinar every month to promote the FileMaker community and to promote FileMaker and related items and products and services. And each company is kind of in a different geographic region. I'm 360Works. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. And at the end of this slide, I'll show you, or at the end of this presentation, I'll show you another slide that lists these companies and where they are. And if you have questions about anything presented in here, you can certainly contact me. If you want help integrating it, you can also contact any member of FM Academy. They're all very familiar. We're all very familiar with each other's products and services. For instance, if you were in the Portland area, you could call MSN Media. That's Matt Navarre, and he could help you set this up with your own solution. If you're in the Atlanta, Georgia area, you'd call 360Works. Okay, good. I'm seeing some people saying that video and audio is good. Thanks, guys, for letting me know. So let me just, before I actually get into the actual presentation, I want to make a little point that unlike some other webinars you might have been on, I really would like to get questions during the webinar. If you guys have worked with us before, you probably have talked to Travis, Travis Green. He's our project manager. He's on this call with us. Travis, are you there?
Hey, guys.
So Travis is going to be monitoring the questions as we go. I don't really have enough content to fill this whole time on the webinar, so I'm planning on stopping to take questions. So anything that comes up as I'm going, please post it on there, and Travis will be able to read those. He can jump in and let me know if there's an interest in a certain topic or feature or question or comparison or something. So don't be shy with the questions. So feel free to let those fly. All right. So let's talk about what CloudMail is. And it's kind of hard to explain because I don't think that there's something like it, at least not in the FileMaker space at the moment. So what it is it's a plugin for sending outbound email messages. It's not for inbound email messages. I'll talk later contrasting our CloudMail product versus our email plugin. But one of the big differences is that CloudMail is specifically for sending. And then, again, unlike our traditional email plugin, it's for monitoring interactions. So we monitor clicks, views, bounces, deliveries, complaints, unsubscribes. And all of that stuff is done using Amazon Web Services, which is where the cloud part of the name comes from, because Amazon Web Services is the preeminent provider of cloud processing services. And so CloudMail is really a way of leveraging a lot of those different services that Amazon provides from FileMaker. Oops. So because it's kind of a different paradigm, I thought I would start off showing you kind of an architectural overview. I'm not a graphic designer, and so that may be obvious looking at this, but hopefully it makes the point. So starting from the left, we've got our FileMaker Pro or server, because CloudMail can run in either Pro or server. You could use it with scheduled scripts or perform script on server or WebDirect or whatever you want. So traditionally, you would use SMTP with either FileMaker's built-in email or an email plugin to send messages on your SMTP port to a traditional SMTP server, typically hosted by your internet service provider. And if you have any experience doing kind of marketing email blasts or announcements or anything like that from FileMaker, you know there are a lot of issues and problems with doing that. If you, one is that your ISP may block you if you try to use a third-party SMTP server. Because they feel like maybe you're trying to get to an open relay on the internet and spam people. So they'll block you from going outside their SMTP server. Then you've got throttling problems where the ISP, on the one hand, they're saying you have to use our mail server, but then on the other hand, they often will put a cap on how many messages you can send per minute or per hour, and they'll reject your messages if you exceed that cap. So that's what I mean by the throttling. The blacklisting is a problem in that if people complain about messages that they receive, then your internet service provider may shut you down and just blacklist you, or they may themselves have their IP address blacklisted. And so it's in their interests to basically not let you send a lot of emails through their server. When you combine all these issues with the throttling and a large volume delivery, it may take hours or days to send a large email blast. Even a small email blast might take several hours if your internet service provider only allows a few hundred messages per hour. So now we get to the CloudMail section of how this works and kind of the alternative approach here. So CloudMail is a plugin. It's, you install it in FileMaker Pro or FileMaker Server, or technically you can install it in the FileMaker web publishing engine as well. And it uses, instead of using SMTP to talk to your internet service provider's SMTP server, it uses HTTPS, which is not blocked by anybody, to send requests up to Amazon. And so my little cloud thing in here is the middle is Amazon. If you're not familiar with some of the Amazon acronyms, let me talk about the acronyms first and then go back and explain them. I'm going to start from the middle, actually. EC2. I start with that because that's the one you guys have probably most often heard of. EC2 stands for Elastic Cloud Computing, and it's a way for you to host your own virtual servers on Amazon's racks. And so, you essentially, you don't, technically you don't own the service, but you're essentially leasing a server from Amazon to do whatever you want. At the bottom, you've got Amazon SQS, which SQS is Simple Queue Service. And Simple Queue Service, I mean, I love Simple Queue Service. I could have a webinar talking about all the things you could do with Simple Queue Service. But essentially, it's a very high volume, high capacity way of very rapidly posting messages to a queue, a processing list, and it cannot run out of disk space, and it cannot be overwhelmed by volume. And so there is no limit to the amount of information you can post or the rate at which you can post it to Amazon Simple Queue Service. And then at the top here, we've got Amazon SES. SES is Simple Email Sending Service. So now that you know what those acronyms are, this diagram will make more sense, because what the CloudMail plugin does is it uses HTTPS to post your messages very quickly to the Simple Queue service. Regardless of how long it takes to actually send them, as soon as they've been posted to the Simple Queue service, FileMaker frees up. So you can send a 20,000 person email blast in like 12 seconds. And FileMaker is immediately done. Then that stuff goes into the queue, and you can continue working on your computer. Once that stuff gets onto the queue, an EC2 instance that we set up for you. Oh, and I just realized something I missed at the beginning of this. This is assuming that you set up your own AWS. AWS is an acronym for Amazon Web Services. You will need your own Amazon Web Services account in order to use CloudMail. If you already have an AWS account, you can use that. If you don't have an AWS account, you can set one up. And Amazon actually has special pricing for the first year that you have your Amazon account. And I'm going to get into that more when I get to the pricing section. So even if you did have an account, there are actually some advantages to setting up one specifically for CloudMail because of the special pricing that you get from Amazon. But in either case, whether you have one already or whether you create a new one, you'll have your own AWS account. And this EC2 instance at this point in the graph, this is not our instance. This is actually your instance. And when the plugin first launches, it actually sets up, it automatically leases a new server on your behalf from Amazon to handle all this. And when I get in the pricing section, you'll see that this costs very, very little. So our plugin is going to run, it's going to set up this new EC2 server that is yours, that is, it belongs to you, and you're essentially leasing it from Amazon. The messages get posted to the Simple Queue service. This instance that is running the CloudMail software, the server side of the software, there's really two sides. There's the plugin side and the server side. The server side pulls messages off of Simple Queue service, and it pushes them to the Simple Email service. This is a service that Amazon runs that sends out emails, and it's designed for very industrial strength applications. The rate at which it sends emails depends on what you negotiate with Amazon. I believe that their default starting rate is 14 messages per second. In our case, we asked for an increase, and they increased us to 90 records per second, 90 emails per second. So we can send out 1,000 email blast in 11 seconds. And I've tested that, and that's actually how long it takes. So we send these things very, very rapidly through Amazon Simple Email Service, which then uses traditional SMTP. It basically translates these HTTP calls to outbound SMTP and sends it to the users that you want to send this broadcast to. When your users receive the messages and they open them and click on them, those open and click records will go back to the EC2 instance that we're running, and this is why this is a double-ended arrow here, we will post those clicks and open messages to the Simple Queue service. The Simple Queue service is then queried whenever you ask it to, and the message will come from the Simple Queue service into the plugin back into FileMaker Pro. So hopefully that kind of gives you an overview of what the process is for CloudMail. And it's really taking advantage of heavy-duty infrastructure that is made available by Amazon Web Services. So I want to talk about just a few bullet points of how this might be different from some ways that you've used this in the past. If you've used external mail services, MailChimp is one, Constant Contact is one, Campaign Monitor is one. We've used those services, and for the most part, we've liked them, and we've been fairly happy with how they work. But the things that we didn't like about them, one was the expense, and two was the lack of control. It's very difficult to customize emails. If you want to use Constant Contact, for instance, and you want to send a mailing list to 1,000 people, and you want to vary slightly depending on maybe what their membership is, or what the renewal dates are, or what they've expressed interest with you from before, it's a big process to do it. With CloudMail, the body of the message is up to you. You design it. You just you're just giving us a field with the contents of the message, and you can either use one message for everybody, you could use one message for a certain group of people, and divide your mailing list into like a dozen different groups and send out a dozen different messages, or maybe you send a completely personalized email to each person on your list. It doesn't. CloudMail is going to work fine with all of those scenarios, and so you have a lot more control of customizing your emails than you would with an external mail service. You can also, one of the features that we've built in that I didn't put in the kind of the diagram in the earlier slide is that CloudMail can upload and download. Upload actually. It doesn't have a download feature. It has an ability to upload files to Amazon S3. S3 is Amazon's storage engine. It stands for Simple. Oh shoot, I shouldn't have said what it stands for. Simple Secure Storage? I don't know. Simple something storage. And so CloudMail will upload files for you to S3 that you can then link to from your email. I'm going to show you an example of that when we get to the demo. But that allows you a lot of control over essentially the equivalent of attachments. You've got this ability to automate the workflow, which again, that's not something that you have when you use an external delivery service. If you want to set it so that there's a scheduled script that runs on your server, maybe once every 24 hours and checks to see if certain people need renewal notices, you can do all of that in a completely automated FileMaker script. This whole process is driven by FileMaker. Forget what you might know about exporting from FileMaker and importing to something else. There is no exporting and importing because the FileMaker is the only list in this thing, and that's the last bullet point here. You don't have a bunch of different mailing lists in a bunch of different places, and when those mailing lists get modified by the other services, you try to import them and match them or overwrite them or do any stuff like that. You just have one list and it lives in FileMaker, and that's it. And then you control who gets, which sections of that list you want to send to. There's a lot of reliability improvements. And here I'm comparing.
Hey, Jesse.
Yeah. Yeah, Travis.
So we had a couple of questions. If you wanted to go back,
if you wanted to go
back to uploading images to S3,
yes.
A couple of questions about whether those are simply for attachments, or can you also store the images from the inline HTML emails?
Yes, both would work. So you can upload. So let me explain what it does and does not do. we do not support, it's possible to do it, but we decided not to support embedding images or attachments directly inside the content of the email message that goes out. There's a lot of reasons to do it, and that's just in general going away. It bloats the size of your email message. It's a red flag to virus scanners, and it's actually more expensive from an Amazon standpoint to send out attachments from a bandwidth standpoint. So what we do instead is we allow you to upload anything you want to S3, and then you can reference those items in your HTML. If you want to have an image that appears within a certain section of your message, you would just stick an IMG tag within your HTML, and the source of that IMG tag would be that S3 URL. So you can definitely have inline images directly in the content of your HTML message. It's just that they will be being pulled from S3 instead of being embedded directly inside the content of the message, enlarging the message. And of course, you can just have simple hyperlinks by doing an ahref equals and then whatever the link is that you want to include. And those would be clickable links that you can click to download files. So you could do PDFs or PowerPoints or whatever you want. So you've got total control over either images or clickable links. Were there other questions that we should answer here, or should I move on?
Yeah, just one more. Would a single AWS account be able to handle multiple FileMaker systems and multiple from reply to addresses, or what's the relationship between an AWS account and the actual instance of the plugin?
That's a good question, and it's not. It's a good question. There is no limitation on the amount of from addresses you can do. One thing you will notice while we're on the topic of from addresses is that each time you use a new from address for the first time, Amazon will require you to click, they'll send a verification email to that, and you'll have to click the link to verify that that email address is valid. So other than the requirement that you have to click a link first before sending from that address to just validate that address, and that's a one-time thing. Once you verify address, it stays verified forever. But there's no limit on the number of from addresses that you can use. One thing to be aware of, though, is that when we get to the part about downloading results, the results are stored on a per AWS account basis. So if you had, let's say you had 3 different people that were going to use this plugin. If their files, what I would recommend in that scenario, if those 3 people are all using the same AWS account, I would recommend that the file be hosted on FileMaker server, because whoever, if person 1 downloads the results, all those results are going to come into his FileMaker database, even if the results were the results of emails sent out by person 2 or 3. That's not a problem if the file is centrally hosted. If you've got it on FileMaker server, then when person 1 downloads all the results for person 1, 2, and 3, that's fine. They can all see their messages. But I wouldn't recommend having separate copies of FileMaker Pro all sharing the same AWS account, because then when person 1 downloads the messages, he'll get persons 1, 2, and 3's results, and then when 2 and 3 go to download their results, they won't get their results, or they won't get the ones at least that were downloaded by person 1. So you could set up multiple AWS accounts if you did want to use that scenario of 3 separate copies of FileMaker, or if you could host it on FileMaker server, or just have a single person with a single copy of FileMaker if you wanted to just use a single AWS account. There's no limitations on the number of AWS accounts you can have with the plugin. Any other questions there? All right, I'm not hearing anything, so I'm going to move on. Let's talk about reliability. So I've already talked in the overview thing about SMTP. There's a lot of problems with trying to send through SMTP. It's blocked by a lot of firewalls and a lot of internet service providers. Since we're using HTTPS, you really don't have to worry about port blocking at all. There's something that's really important to understand that's new. I learned about it in the process of working on this, which is DKIM, Domain Key Identification Mechanism, something along those lines. Domain key identification something. What that means is that you can optionally enable DKIM validation on Amazon S3, and we have instructions for doing this in the documentation. It's not a hard process at all. Essentially, what happens is that Amazon gives you some records to add to your DNS server. By adding those records to your DNS server, you validate that Amazon is authorized to send email messages on your behalf. The reason that this is important is because of anti-spam filters. When an anti-spam filter receives a message from an Amazon server, if it does not have a DKIM header on it, they're going to just evaluate it based on, have I gotten any junk from this Amazon server before? And I don't know. I mean, who knows? Maybe Amazon's pretty good about preventing junk being sent through the server, but you don't really know. And so you might be lumped in with other people that have a lower reputation score than you do, just based on the fact that you're going through an Amazon server. If you use DKIM, instead of being evaluated based on the IP address of the Amazon server you're sending from, you're validated based on your domain. So if I send an email address from 360works.com through Amazon, I've set up DKIM validation, which means the recipient's mail server, when they're checking to see whether it's spam or not, it's really immaterial to them that it happened to be sent through Amazon servers. Instead, they're going to look and say, is 360works.com a known spammer or not? And so DKIM is a crucial part of making sure that your messages get through to their intended recipients. And you'll see, I'll show you the DKIM headers in the validation, but that's a nice feature of sending through Amazon. DKIM is fairly complex to set up ordinarily, but Amazon Simple Email Sending does all of the hard work and leaves the only thing you need to do is just add 3 entries to your DNS server, and all the rest of it is done by Amazon. From a reliability standpoint, it doesn't make any difference whether FileMaker is running or not. You don't need a FileMaker server to be running. You don't need an internet connection. Even when the users are clicking on the links or they're unsubscribing and all that stuff, it's not going to your server, it's going to Amazon's server. So you could be using this tool from home, from tethering on an internet device. It doesn't make any difference. No incoming traffic is going to come back to you except when you request it. So you don't need to worry about the reliability of your own internet connection or your own server. Any questions on that slide, Travis, before I go ahead?
Not specifically. A couple of questions about how read receipts are actually used and if those are supported using CloudMail.
Okay, so the question about read receipts, there are 2 different sort of delivery notifications or read receipts. Amazon will tell us whether a message was successfully delivered or whether it bounced. And Amazon's fairly smart about detecting things like out-of-office messages and reporting those as a bounce. So Amazon will pretty reliably tell you whether a message made it to its intended server or not. It won't tell you whether or not that recipient actually opened the message and read it. We kind of do that with CloudMail, but that's, I think, different than the question that's probably being asked about read receipts. Read receipts are a header that can be set in a message. And currently at this time, we don't have the ability to customize headers in CloudMail. So you wouldn't be able to add that the header to request a read receipt when the user actually clicks the message to open it. However, because CloudMail embeds a tracking image, when the user opens it, you will see in CloudMail, assuming that they have image loading enabled, you will see that in the list of views that you get from CloudMail. And I'll show you that when we get to the demo. And we'll make a note of that feature request to support I forget the RFC number, but there's an RFC number for a header that you can optionally add. So we can add that to the plugin to add that header on the message. Should I keep going, Travis?
Okay, and one more time, if you can just run through DKIM one more time, the advantages to using it and how you can quickly set that up.
So in a nutshell, the advantage of DKIM is that it authenticates to the receiving server that whoever owns the domain, I'm going to use 360works.com as an example. I have gone in and added the DKIM entries to my DNS server. And that proves to whoever receives the message from Amazon, since there is a DKIM header in Amazon that matches the value that I've entered in my DNS server, and it's not quite that simple. It's signed and hashed and encrypted, so it can't be faked. Whoever receives that message knows that the 360works.com owner authorized Amazon to send that message to them. An example of how that of what that prevents is if I am not the owner of 360works.com and there's nothing stopping me from pretending that if I'm the owner of xyz.com, I could send an email to somebody claiming to be Jesse at 360works.com. But if I don't have the DKIM headers in that, the email recipient on the other end, or the SMTP server, is going to know that this message may not have originated from 360works.com. If the message has the DKIM headers, then that server knows that the message actually did originate from somebody authorized to send messages from 360works.com. It's not some spam or hijacking our domain, and therefore the receiving server will use the 360works.com domain for evaluating whether or not to allow that message through the spam filter. If you have other questions about DKIM, contact us at support@360works.com, or and give us more specific questions, and we can talk about those. So in the management section and reporting section, there's a lot that you get here that you don't get when you just send email using FileMaker's built-in mail server, or using like a traditional email plugin, such as the 360Works email plugin. One is deduping. You don't have to worry about people getting multiple emails. It's a little ironic, because I think a lot of people that are on this webinar probably did actually get 2 requests to come to the webinar. I assure you that's not a flaw in CloudMail. That was just a coordination issue between Travis and I, that we both thought that that we were supposed to be sending it, and so we wound up sending it twice. But that was not due to any issue with CloudMail. So CloudMail, even if your mailing list contains somebody 5 times, they're only going to get 1 copy of that message. As I've talked about several times, we track deliveries, we track bounces. You can use those bounces to update your mailing list. When an email bounces, you'll know the bounces are categorized as either temporary or permanent. And a permanent bounce means that mail server, affirmatively said back to Amazon, this person is not here anymore. There is no account for that. Amazon will then give that to CloudMail, which then imports into FileMaker, and then you can use those permanent bounces to go back through and winnow out your trim down your mailing list, so that you don't keep trying to send to old emails that are known to be invalid. And unsubscribes, there's a legal requirement that your email messages, if you're sending a broadcast email, you're legally required to include an automated unsubscribe feature. And so for compliance purposes, this is an important feature that you need to be able to have people be able to easily unsubscribe. And so you can do that very simply with CloudMail, and it takes care of that for you. So you can't even accidentally send it to the same person twice. If somebody unsubscribes, even if they're still on your mailing list and you try to send it out again, it'll automatically remove any people that have unsubscribed or complained about your emails in the past, so that you're guaranteed to not send it to them multiple times, and hopefully not have those complaints in the first place by avoiding the unsubscribes. Yeah, Travis.
We had one question asking whether the unsubscribe parameter was required for the plugin. Can you also send emails without the unsubscribe?
What you can do, we will always. Oh! I see what you're asking. Yes. No, there is no requirement that you do an unsubscribe. Travis, if you can remind me when I get to the demo, I don't think my test message has an unsubscribe. If you'll remind me when I get there, I'll show you how you can make it so that the message has an unsubscribe or doesn't. It does not automatically put the unsubscribe tag in your message. You have to position it and word it the way that you want, and then CloudMail will take care of making it so that the link goes somewhere correct. So you have total control over how it's presented and whether it's presented. Other questions on this one?
And perhaps we'll cover this. We'll probably cover this when you get to the demo, but how would one go about eliminating bounces? Would you remove those people manually from your mailing list, or does CloudMail handle that?
We don't automatically remove bounces. We automatically do remove complaints. So if somebody actually, some email service providers have a button to flag something as spam. If it's flagged as spam, then that comes back to Amazon. Amazon lets CloudMail know, and CloudMail will add them to a list of people never send to again. Bounces, we don't automatically do that. So we will let you know when something bounced, but I feel like it might be too aggressive for us to just automatically not send to those. We make it very easy for you to search by those and delete them from your mailing list or flag them not to send again, but we don't actually automatically suppress them. Performance. So if you know me, if you've talked to me, if you know MirrorSync, which is my product that I personally work on all the time, you know that I care a lot about speed. And so I worked really hard on this to make it really, really fast. And so you can send you can use this for single emails. You can use it for a few hundred mails. You can use it for tens of thousands of emails. I haven't actually tested it, but I'm pretty sure that it would probably work with millions of emails. And for the most part, it'll send those in a few seconds. It depends on how much customizing you're doing. If you're sending an individually customized email to each person, it will take longer. Um, if you're sending one email message to everybody, then I've tested it and it'll send to 20,000 people in. Travis, we did a test to 20,000 recipients, and I think that went in like 6 seconds, 12 seconds, something like that. Um, that's how long it takes to queue it to the simple queue service. And then the actual sending rate, it depends on whatever your limit is on SES. And I already talked about the limits that the default is 14 per second, which is quite a bit. That's 140 messages per minute. Um, and or no, it's not. It's 140 messages in 10 seconds. Uh, Sorry for the math issue there. But my calculator's dead. Oh wait, here 14. 840 messages per minute. So that's the default limit that you get when you open your SES account. As I mentioned, we requested our limit to be bumped up, so they raised it to 90 per second. So we can send 1,000 emails in 11 seconds. And there's a lot of multi-threading going on that EC2 instance to simultaneously push those things to SES as fast as they can go while pulling in the clicks and notifications and deliveries on several other threads as fast as they can go. And there's no throttling on this. There's no internet service provider capping you at a certain amount that you can send from FileMaker. It'll go from FileMaker to the simple queue service as fast as the network will get it there. And so here, it's a little bit confusing because we make a plugin, the 360Works plugin that sends emails, and now we have another plugin called CloudMail. And what are they? Why do we have two different plugins that seem to do kind of the same thing? So I designed this chart to hopefully explain this better. Both plugins are good for sending one email. There's not you don't have to use CloudMail to send only big lists. Originally we called our internal name was going to be bulk mail or mass mail or something like that, or email blaster. But those all had connotations that you could really only use it for big campaigns. There's no reason that you couldn't use, if all you need is outbound sending, you could totally use CloudMail to do all of your outbound sending, whether it's one message or a million messages. And that's the same between both. Both plugins will work fine for a single email. Both plugins will work fine for like 100 emails or so. If you've got thousands or millions, just about a type of thousands. If you've got thousands or millions of emails, you don't want to do that with a traditional email plugin. And it's not just the email plugin that's the problem, it's the SMTP server that's the problem too. So if you're getting thousands or millions of emails, that was a big reason that why we created CloudMail, was to support that. Both CloudMail and the email plugin will support HTML and plain text versions of your messages so that you can embed both, and then depending on what kind of mail client it has, it'll either display the plain version or the HTML version. Only the email plugin allows you to receive incoming messages. So if you have a need for receiving incoming email, then you'll want to make sure that you've got the 360Works email plugin to do that. Only the 360Works email plugin allows you to customize the email headers. I alluded to that before with the read receipts. So if you need to control those headers, the email plugin would be your best bet. Also, the email plugin, and not everybody knows this, but the email plugin supports SMS and instant messaging as well. So if you need those two features, those are both reasons to use the 360Works email plugin. The other features that I have here are all reasons that you would use CloudMail. If you're sending very large quantities of emails, if you want to automatically be able to upload attachments to S3, that's a feature specifically in CloudMail. The ability to dedupe all of your email messages is in CloudMail. The automated unsubscribe is only in CloudMail. All of the reporting things of deliveries, bounces, views, and clicks, that's all exclusive to CloudMail. And working without an SMTP server, that's the fundamental baseline difference between these two plugins, is that email plugin is designed for sending via SMTP. CloudMail is a completely different delivery mechanism that does not use SMTP. at least not between us and Amazon. Amazon eventually uses SMTP because the recipient has to receive it that way. But those are the fundamental differences. I'm about to get to the demo, but before I get there, Travis, are there other questions we should stop for? We're doing pretty good on time.
Yeah, I got a couple here. One is we talked a little bit about how quickly messages are delivered to the recipients, but can you actually upload to Amazon and then control when the messages should be delivered?
Oh, good question. That is something that did not make the cut for our delivery date, but it is on our short list of features. So yes, I do plan on releasing an update fairly soon. It'll be a free update, to everyone who's bought CloudMail, a free update that will allow you to specify a delivery date at some future point to send that email out. So you can say, I want this to go, Wednesday at 4 o'clock, or I want it to go at 1 o'clock a.m., so that it's not bothering people. We don't have that in there yet, but that will be added soon. Any other questions?
Okay, and we had a couple of questions specific to the email plugin. We'll go ahead and follow up with you guys offline. But we did have a question about any upgrade from email to CloudMail and whether that would be necessary or useful.
Both products are part of the portfolio bundle. So if you have the 360Works portfolio bundle, then you already have a valid license to CloudMail. You can start using it immediately. There is not an upgrade path from one to the other. So if you've bought email, we don't credit that towards CloudMail or vice versa. However, we do credit the purchase of the email plugin towards the portfolio bundle. So if you have the email plugin and you like CloudMail, and maybe there's some other products such as MirrorSync or FTP that you like, or Web Services Manager, a lot of those, almost all of our products are included in the 360Works portfolio bundle. So if you've bought one or two or three of our products, those credit towards the portfolio bundle. That will get you all of our other products, including CloudMail. So that would be the upgrade path there, but there is not a direct cross grade from one product to the other. Anything else?
No, that's all I have for right now.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to jump into the demo. And my demo is really short. I'm going to send 2 emails from CloudMail. So let me go to campaign. So I've got this CloudMail webinar live demo. And so this is the FileMaker database that comes with CloudMail. And before I actually do the demo, let me just talk about how you would use this. You can certainly use this file, the CloudMail file that comes with CloudMail, this FileMaker file, as your email sending tool. Travis actually built most of this, and you are able to import all of your emails. You can set up tags, and then if a tag in the campaign matches a recipient tag, they'll be added to that campaign mailing list. And you can do all of your sending and receiving directly from this file. Another thing that you could do so that you don't have to import and export is you can go into the relationship graph, and you can replace the recipient's, I can't see because my GoToWebinar thing is blocking it right now. But if I go to my contacts table right here, this is the mailing list. I could replace this with some other table occurrence from an external file so that you could still use this database as your sending thing, as your sending framework, but be working with underlying data brought in from some other FileMaker table. And the third thing you can do is that since this is a plugin, you could completely scrap this file and you can just write your own scripts, and there's documentation that comes with the plugin outlining the function calls. But I just want to make it clear that you don't have to know a whole lot about FileMaker to use this. You can just use this FileMaker database out of the box, or if you're a more expert FileMaker developer, you can bolt the plugin directly into your own email sending solution, calling the plugin directly. So with that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and do a quick test here. Before I do it, I'm just going to cheat for a second here and just make sure that I'm clear of all the results that I received before. I've been doing some testing, so I just wanted to clear all that stuff out and make sure that there's nothing in there yet. Okay, good. So back to here. I'm going to send this message to myself, and here's our campaign. It's the CloudMail Webinar Live demo. We can have an HTML version of the message, and here this is, and I can click a little preview and I can see what it looks like. We've got a plain text version, which I don't have in this example. And so I mentioned that I would demonstrate an unsubscribe link. I'm going to stick that on here. And if I want to make that a clickable link, I make it a hyperlink. And I'm going to come back and fill in that URL in just a second. So that's now a link. And what I will do is that in this section right here, I'll put square brackets unsubscribe. And that's a tag that CloudMail knows about. So when it sees this, it will replace it with a link pointing to the CloudMail server. So when I preview this now, this isn't going to do anything because it hasn't been replaced. It's still the square brackets. But to the question about do we need to have an unsubscribe link? No, you don't need to. But if you do, you have total control over where it appears and how it appears. And then CloudMail will just replace it with the actual link to point to the unsubscribe server. So I'm going to go ahead and send this message now. I've got a test account set up on my Gmail. So that's sent successfully. As I mentioned, this is an example of using CloudMail to send to just a single email recipient. You can certainly use it to send to whoever you want. So this message just came in. You can see that it comes in very quickly. All of those moving parts about FileMaker to the plugin over HTTPS to simple queue service to SES to over SMTP. I mean, it usually happens under 4 or 5 seconds until I receive my test messages. So here's the message that I've got. I know that it's the right one because here's the customization that I just made. And if I were to click that unsubscribe link, here's what it takes me to. So I can optionally give them a reason, and then I've got my automated confirm unsubscribe, which I'm not going to click right now because I'm going to use this test again. And I want to show you something in the links here. If I hover over them, notice that this is actually, let's use this FileMaker Academy one instead. Notice that the link that it's set to go to is not the actual link that the user is clicking on. When they click on this, it's going to take them to cloudmail.360works.com. When I click that, it went very briefly to cloudmail.360works.com, and then it immediately redirected to the actual destination. So my destination here matches the destination in my email, but it just took me through CloudMail to get there. And the reason for that is that we can track the number of clicks. Let me jump back no, I'm going to come back to that in a second. Before I jump back to show you the results, I want to show the DKIM part here. So I'm going to view the raw source of this message. So this is what the actual mail server sees as it's going through. And what I want to show you is this part right here, DKIM signature version 1, and then here's the hashing algorithm that's used. But then notice this D equals 360works.com. That's telling the receiving mail server, which is Gmail in this particular case, that this email originated from somebody at 360works.com. And it's not just claiming that, it's actually proving that because this hashed section right here, which is not possible to forge, I should never say not possible, can't easily be forged, is validating that this was actually sent by somebody. Basically what it's validating is that whoever sent this message had rights to customize the DNS server for 360works.com. And so that way, the Gmail server knows that this is from 360works.com, even though the actual sending server is AmazonSES.com right up here. And if we look in this authentication section right here, we can see DKIM equals pass. Header equals at 360works.com. That means that Gmail has validated that this DKIM signature is valid and that it passes validation, and to treat this as if the header is from 360works.com and the server is from 360works.com. So that's an important part of what I wanted to show here is setting up that DKIM validation so that it's going to make it so that your messages are not flagged as spam. Unless, of course, you're sending out spam, in which case your domain will get a bad reputation. And then I want to jump to this results thing. I'm going to click Get Results. And so that just downloaded this message. And some of these message views are not actually from this. Remember, when we all the statistics we get are for our whole AWS account. So I'm sure that a bunch of those views were from people viewing other emails that I've sent out using our AWS account. But this message was delivered and there was a click on a link. And so how do we know that? When we look at deliveries, so this is Amazon showing us that that was successfully delivered. And then here's the clicks part, and it shows that we clicked on FileMakerAcademy.com. And so I'm going to delete my test. And so now I'm going to jump back to my campaign. And I want to make sure I do this very carefully. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this same message I just did. Oh, almost the same. I wanted to show, sorry to be so scattered. I want to show you how to do attachments. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the slide deck that I'm showing you, and I'm going to include that as an attachment in this email. So I'm going to go to Manage Attachments, and I'm going to add. So this is my list of things that I've uploaded to S3. And I can take the URL from any of these and then use it to embed them in my message. So I'm going to click Add a new asset. I'm going to insert a file. It's the one on my desktop. It's this FMA presentation. And I'm going to call it CloudMail Webinar Slides. Upload that. So what just happened there when I clicked the upload button is that it uploaded that PowerPoint file to S3. And it happens pretty quickly. That's like a 1.1 megabyte file. S3 is really fast. So it just uploaded that, and then it gave me this URL that I can use to embed in my email. So I'm going to copy that URL. I'm going to come back here. I'm going to say, for a copy of the slides from this. Why can't I type? Here are the slides from this presentation. And I will make that a hyperlink, and I will paste in the URL to download that file. And so when I preview this, here are the actual, and this might, I don't know what a web viewer will do actually in this case. It looks like it actually did download it. I can see it very quickly doing something down there. Probably put it in my downloads folder. So, so this is how you would do attachments or inline images using CloudMail. So I've changed that, and now I'm going to go back to my campaign, and I've got it set to go to a webinar. And what I did, I hope you guys will forgive me, but I took all of the people who are registered for this webinar, and as of around 10:30 in the morning today, and I imported all your email addresses into this file, and I'm going to go ahead and send this file out to you. So I'm going to test and send. There's 332 people that are going to receive this, and I'll go ahead and hit send. Really send CloudMail Web live demo to 332 people. Yes, go ahead. And so those messages, that took 600.64 seconds to send out those 332 messages. If we did the math, that's 518 per second. And probably within the next 5 to 10 seconds, if you want to check your email, you should start receiving those messages from CloudMail. And the reason I wanted to do this was just give you an idea of how rapid it is to send that out. If we had sent 332 messages one at a time via SMTP, I don't know, it might have taken, I don't know, maybe 2 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, something like that. So you can see that there's just orders of magnitude difference in speed in terms of sending this through, and then the Amazon SES servers that are pushing this out. So that's it for the demo. I've got a few slides
Jesse, it
left.
looks like
Yeah. What's that, Travis?
Jesse, it looks like people are already resending. It looks like people are already receiving those. I wanted to go back to unsubscribes. We had a couple of questions about that, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple of questions. One is regarding the unsubscribe page. Is that something that can be customized by users?
That is another feature that is probably going to come on the same time frame as the scheduled sending. It's on our very short list of features for the next update. We're going to make it so that you can use that S3 upload feature to create your own HTML page and upload those to S3. And if when CloudMail sees that there's a file with a special name on S3, it'll use that instead of the standard unsubscribe template. So the answer is yes, but not quite yet.
Okay, and the other was, if we're managing unsubscribes, what happens if someone unsubscribes by mistake? Is there a way to add somebody back to the list?
Yes, what you can do is, I'm not going to demonstrate it right now because I don't want to show the whole mailing list. Because I want to respect confidentiality of the email addresses that people registered with. But the short answer to your question is yes, there is a feature here. If I go to campaign, or actually it's in the mailing list section, which I'm not going to go to right now. But when you go to mailing list, you can see all the names on there, and there is a remove from blacklist button that can be clicked to remove them from that blacklist. And then it'll automatically start resuming sending them on the next campaign. I guess that was a very long answer that could have been answered much shorter and simply. The answer is yes. You can go to that list and remove them from the blacklist. Other questions?
Would you be able to maybe would you be able to pop open the managed scripts and show what a sending script looks like in using
Sure.
CloudMail?
So what I'll show you right now is the one that sends to a single recipient. So this is the quick send thing that I did when here, let me jump over. So if I click this send button, that send button is calling this script. And so the first thing that we do here is we set error capture on. That's across the board in all of our plugins. That if you don't set error capture on, then any errors will be popped up automatically to the user. By setting them on, the developer has more control over whether to show those or not. The next thing we do, which is a little different than like a traditional email plugin, is we call this function to set our Amazon credentials. And this is going to be the access key and the secret key that we get from our AWS account. And then we do some error checking. And then I'm really just trying to highlight the plugin function calls. After the error checking, we're going to call CM add recipient. And we'll call this once per person that we want to send to. So if we were sending to 1,000 people, we would call CM for CloudMail, add recipient, and then we would call that 1,000 times to add 1,000 recipients. The last thing is this CMQ messages. And the CMQ message is where you actually pass it. Here's the HTML version. Here's my text version. Here's my subject. Here's the name of, here's who I want it to be from. Here's the name that I want to classify this batch as. And here's the DNS name. The DNS name I forgot to touch on. If you'll notice that when I hover over this, it says cloudmail.360works.com. That comes from this setting right here, this CloudMail DNS entry. So you can specify cloudmail.360works.com. You point that to the IP address of your server. You can get the IP address of the server by clicking this test button, and it'll tell you what the IP address is of the server that CloudMail is running at on EC2. So I would take this address, I would go into my DNS server, I would map it so that whatever name I want goes to this address, and then by putting the name into here, when CloudMail sends those emails out, it'll put that name in here so that recipients will know that this is a 360works.com message. If you didn't do that, what it would have would be an Amazon name, and the Amazon name it's hard to tell that it's associated with 360works.com. It's impossible to tell that it's associated with 360works. So let's jump back to the script for a second. So that's what that DNS thing is for. And then that's it. The only other plugin function that I didn't really go over is this last error function. If you want to get, if something went wrong, you can call CM last error to get a description of what it is. So most of the script is error checking. There's only actually actually let's take this out. So there's essentially 3 core functions being called: set my Amazon credentials, add one or more recipients, send the message. That's the script in a nutshell to send it. The receiving is a bit more complex, but it's not out of the reach of any intermediate FileMaker developer. essentially what you do is you call CM next result and you tell it what kind of result you're interested in. In this case, I want to get deliveries. And then you just call it once per field to say, these are all the fields that I want from deliveries. And then you repeat that same process for bounces and for complaints, etc. So while the script is somewhat long, it's really very easy to understand. There's only actually two function calls that you're making, next result and get result info, to go through the whole list of all the different things that you get from the result of sending an email campaign. Other questions before I leave the demo?
Yeah, Jesse, we're managing the relationships between contacts and campaigns through tags. Can you talk a little bit about how those are used?
You know, I'm not going to talk too much about that because it's really that's something that you. Well, okay. Essentially, what the tags are is that there is a return separated list for a given campaign of just tag words. And then in the email recipients database, there's also a return separated list of tags. And then all we do is that we use FileMaker's relationship function, which can take any multi-line key and match it with any other multi-line key. You know, if you've got, no, that's not the one I'm looking for. I don't want to waste time trying to find it right now. But the, well, Travis, do you know? Tags, all deliveries, unsubscribes. I'm not going to worry about it at the moment, but essentially all it is just a normal relationship between the tags field and the recipients, and so and the tag field and the recipients. So that way, you can easily say, okay, I want, in our case, in 360Works case, I might want to send out an email to everyone that has downloaded CloudMail, and if I have a tag for CloudMail, and let's say I also want to send it to everyone that I talked to at DevCon. So if I have a tag for CloudMail and a tag for DevCon, I could check those two boxes, and then on the contact side, if anyone had either CloudMail or DevCon or both in that return separated list, then the way FileMaker resolves relationships will automatically match those contacts. The reason that I was kind of hesitant to talk about this at the beginning is you certainly don't need to do it that way. If you're building your own FileMaker solution, it's completely up to you how you want to structure your relationships and how you want to get your found set for mailing lists, whether you want to build a many-to-many join or whether you want to just have a table that you just do finds in and you do whatever arbitrary find criteria you want. You know, that's completely up to you how you choose to manage your mailing list there. We're getting close to the end of the webinar, so I'm going to jump back to the slides, and then anyone who wants to stay on can stay on to ask a few more questions. Let me talk about pricing for a second. So there's two parts of the pricing for CloudMail. There's CloudMail that 360Works charges, and then there's the Amazon Web Services part. So 360Works charges $395, which is the same as our email plugin. It's the same as the enterprise license of our email plugin. That's for unlimited users within an organization. And so, you know, you pay this once for your organization. All of your users can use it. You can run it on the server. It'll work with WebDirect, perform script on server, schedule scripts. So the licensing is dead simple. There's only one thing to buy. The only choice that you might have to make is, would you rather get the portfolio bundle for $1,995, which includes all of our products, or do you just want to buy CloudMail by itself for $395? But there aren't different types of licenses, with one exception, actually, I should point out, which is a solution bundling license. We do have a special license for it for solution developers that are going to distribute CloudMail with their solution, and the pricing for that is on our website. It is part of the portfolio license, so if you already own the portfolio license, you can start using this today, immediately. It's available on our website now, 360works.com/cloudmail. There is a free demo version of it. The demo version has two limitations. One is it only runs for 2 hours every time you start FileMaker, and the other is it can only send up to 10 different recipients. Every time you quit FileMaker and start it back up, you get another 2 hours and another 10 recipients. So it's not like you don't have to worry about using up your 2 hours or your 10 recipients. You just quit FileMaker and start it back up. So that's the 360Works pricing part of it. Then we get to the Amazon SES pricing, because Amazon has their own charges. This looks complicated, but if you're within the first year of service, your price is probably going to be $0, which is pretty simple. I'm assuming that everybody can get this slide, so I'm not going to belabor all of these points here. But essentially, within the first year of service, Amazon allows up to 62,000 emails per month for free, and they charge nothing to host the virtual machine on EC2. And they charge nothing for the first gigabyte of outbound traffic. So when you put all those together, you're looking at a net price of zero for 62,000 messages per month for the first 12 months. After the first 12 months, it's not zero anymore, but it's still very inexpensive. The virtual machine hosting is $9.50 per month, and that can actually even be reduced lower if you want to look onto Amazon pricing for committing to like a 1 year or 3 year committed term. So you're looking at $9.50 for the hosting plus $1 per 10,000 emails. That's pretty cheap. So at the bottom part of the slide, I came up with example pricing for if you send a 20 kilobyte message, and your messages are going to tend to be very small. 20 kilobytes is actually huge for not having any attachments embedded inside of it. So this is probably a worst case scenario. If you've got 20 kilobyte messages, and let's say after the first year you send 100,000 messages per month, you're looking at about $20 per month, and that's after the free trial period. It's $3.89 during that 1 year original period. So what you can see from this is that the pricing from Amazon is extremely low, and that's really what we wanted to highlight with this, is that the expense using CloudMail, the expense of sending messages, you do have some upfront investment for the plugin, but then your incremental cost to send messages is either zero or almost zero. And so I think it's a very, very cost-effective option compared to using like a dedicated email delivery service. If you want to know more about CloudMail, here are some URLs. There's 360works.com/CloudMail, which by the way, I'm just going to fix this right now. Right before I got on my webinar, I realized that upper and lowercase doesn't work. So do lowercase, 360works.com/CloudMail lowercase. We post updates on Twitter. So if you want to know when there's like a new version of CloudMail or something, follow us on Twitter. You can always email us, support@360works.com. And I don't expect you to remember our phone number, but if you've got that email from me, it's going to be in these slides. And as I mentioned at the beginning, these are all of the other members of FM Academy, and we all take turns doing these webinars. I believe the last one was Scott Howard Consulting did one from Alabama. He did the previous one. I don't remember who's doing the next one, but we try we kind of try to create this group so that we could rotate and do these monthly webinars. We all do meet in person from time to time to discuss business and technical issues. And so it's a community of developers that know each other very well. We're all familiar with our products and services. Any one of these companies we've worked with all of them on integrating 360Works products. So you would be able to contact any one of these companies to get help if you need help with integrating any of our products or services. And of course, you're always welcome to contact us directly if you'd like to. Again, I'll let you read the slides on this part. The Twitter account, I do want to call your attention. That is actually an underscore at the end there. Twitter.com/FMAcademy_. You will get a different Twitter account if you leave off the underscore. And FileMakerAcademy.com. I will be, as I mentioned at the very beginning, in case you missed it, I'll be taking this recording and I'll be posting it at FileMakerAcademy.com. Hopefully by the end of this coming, not this week, but next week. Hopefully by the end of next week, I will post a recording of this webinar on FileMakerAcademy.com. And that's the end of my formal presentation. So thank you guys very much for being on the call. I'll stay on and answer questions for another 5 minutes or so. But thank you guys very much for being on the call. Travis, do you want to bring up any other questions that I didn't get to?
Yeah, I had one really interesting one, which is what happens if, say, you were sending a large mailing list up to Amazon and the power cut out? How would Amazon know which messages were sent, which ones weren't? How would we handle that?
So that is an interesting question. We break the chunks into 250 kilobytes. This gets into somewhat in the guts of SQS, but Simple Queue Service has a 256 kilobyte limit. So we will break the emails into 250 kilobytes chunks of addresses and send those up. And either the entire 250 kilobyte chunk will go or it won't. So there is no possibility of partial HTML messages, there is a possibility that only a partial section of your list goes up to Amazon. And so it is, I guess the implication in the question is it possible that if you have to then go resend it, that certain people on your list would receive the same email? And the answer to that right now, I think, would probably be yes. If Travis, if you don't mind making a note of that, that's something I can look into to see if there's a way that we can work around that. But yes, if it did, it would definitely send to the recipients that had that were queued before the power went out, and they would receive a fully composed message. But yes, it would be, you would not know which recipients it had sent to and which ones you hadn't. Although, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, what you could do is you could wait an hour, download all the results. You would be able to see which messages had been delivered after an hour, and then you could filter those out from the list and not resend to the same ones based on which ones had been delivered. So there is kind of a manual workaround to prevent resending that to the entire list. Other questions?
So you had mentioned at the beginning that you can customize the messages to be sent to each individual recipient. Could you talk a little bit about how you could do that?
Really all it means, what you saw in that FileMaker script that I showed, is that I was, do I still have the script open? I do not. Essentially, the core functions are set Amazon credentials, add recipient, and queue messages. If you're sending to a big batch of people, what's going to happen is you're going to call this once, the set Amazon credentials once. You'll call CM add recipient a bunch of times, and then you'll call CM queue message once. If you wanted to customize it for each person, it's really not a big change at all. Instead, what you would do is you would call this still once, the CM set Amazon credentials, but then you would call CM add recipient one time and CM queue message one time. Every time you call queue message, it clears your recipient. So by calling add recipient, queue message, add recipient, queue message, you would wind up sending a separate message to each recipient. And you could do it in any batches you want. You could say add 5 here and then queue that, add 20 here and queue that, add 1 and queue that. You can break it up into whatever chunks make sense. Any other questions?
What are the different deployment options for the plugin? Would it work via WebDirect or in a FileMaker runtime?
It could work in either one of those. Those are both completely valid ways to use it. There's really not much difference. If you were using it in WebDirect, you would follow the documentation for installing it for the web publishing engine. If you were using it with the runtime, you would stick it in your extensions directory just like you normally would. So it pretty much supports deployment anywhere that plugins run, which obviously excludes iOS. So this is not going to work on FileMaker Go, although it could be used with Perform Script on Server, so that if you have an iPad and you put your mailing list together, maybe you touch all the people you want to send to, and then you could run a script that calls Perform Script on Server to have the server use CloudMail to send that out.
Okay, a couple of questions about about what we get back from the results. Do we know who clicked the mail or just the total, and also where they clicked? Could you just review how the results are set up again?
Yeah. So when someone clicks a link, we know which link they clicked. And when I think I still have my results open. Yeah. So here's the clicks, and I can see the actual URL that they clicked on. And what I don't show here, I don't want to show it because I've probably got some real emails that I don't want to show. We actually capture, in addition to the information that you see here, not only do we know which link they clicked on, we know the IP address of the person who clicked it, and we get all the headers from their browser on the click. So from the IP address, although CloudMail doesn't do this for you automatically, it would be possible to determine the geographic location that they're in. It would be possible from the headers to see what language that they speak, which browser they're using, whether they're on Mac or Windows. All of that information is captured in the in one of the tables in CloudMail, and that's included in the file, included in the information that we download from those the SES server. I think we have
And
time for
one
maybe like
final question, I think
one more question.
okay, we've had a number of questions about building HTML in FileMaker. Can you just talk a little bit about how that can be used uh, to to send say an email with the recipient's name in it, or templates to customize the HTML that's sent,
I don't
or
have
whether an HTML file can be sent to S3 and referenced as an attachment?
So, okay, so let me answer the last question first because it's the easiest one. Yes, you can absolutely anything that you want, you can upload to S3. You can upload videos, images, HTML files, etc., and you can definitely reference them as attachments. It would be like a clickable link. Um, the first part of the question, I don't have. I'm not sure exactly. We don't. If the question is there a template builder built into CloudMail? The answer there is no. We don't have any like wizard or aid or anything like that for writing the HTML for you for that. What I can tell you is that on the, I think what was the second part of the question about doing the substitution, that part's very straightforward. If I wanted to customize my message for each person that's going out, um, I could say something like, hi there, name. And then I would just use a substitute function in FileMaker right before I call QMessage to replace bracket name with whatever the record is that goes with their email address. So that part's very straightforward, and it works just like any other FileMaker calculation function. That's the beauty of doing all this in FileMaker as opposed to trying to customize it on an external mail delivery service. So I think there were a few different parts of that question, but I think I addressed them all. And that was a kind of a short question. So if there's one more, then we could do one last question.
So the last one that just came in, is there a way to set the DNS name for certain links and not others?
Um, Not on a per link basis. You can definitely do it on a per email basis because the DNS server that you want is one of the parameters that gets passed into the queue message call. So you could just call no DNS server or a different DNS server on a per message basis. We don't have the ability to customize that on a per link basis. If whoever asked that question really needs that feature, they can certainly contact us and we can talk about the possibility of adding that feature. But yes, at the moment, the most granular way that it can be broken out is on a per email basis. I think we should probably wrap up there. We're about 15 minutes over schedule. I'm really very, very impressed with the number of people that came on this call, the number of people that stayed on this call. Still a whole lot of people on the call. So thank you guys all for staying through this. I hope you're really interested. Uh, there is a survey that you'll get either when you exit the meeting, or I think there might be a reminder email that goes out. The survey really helps me figure out what you thought of this and what you'd like to see in the next version of CloudMail. So anything that you want to put in that survey and send in will be really helpful for determining future development directions. But thank you guys very, very much. And I look forward to seeing you on the next webinar that we do.